Order. Good morning, and this morning our final session on Keeping the Power On, we welcome the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State, the Minister for Nuclear and Renewables at the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, Andrew Bowie, to us, and also Minister, can you introduce who's with you as well?
Yes, this is Dan Osgood from the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, but Dan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Minister, so Dan Osgood, I'm the Director for Energy Markets and Analysis at the Department.
Excellent, thank you. Just before I kick off, there's something that you probably know from ministerial questions because of a lot of interest. When does the government plan to open the barriers to community energy schemes, given the government's been talking about this since forever? And when do you plan to open a consultation on this, I should say?
Yeah, we announced a consultation and indeed £10 million to fund community energy schemes through the Energy Act, and the passage of that Act I engaged, quite extensively with groups, with colleagues, and I understand that the publication of that consultation is in fact imminent.
Imminent is weeks, days, hours?
Imminent is imminent, Chairman, but it is incoming.
I feel like we're in an episode of Yes Minister here, Mr. Bowie, so we're in imminent, so we can all decide what government means by imminent. Okay.
I should absolutely qualify that by saying that the community energy projects have the full support of the government, and we want to see them succeed. Indeed, actually, it's one of the priorities of the Secretary of State to make sure that we get this right, which is why such time is being taken over the formulation of that consultation. But it is on its way. I promise you that.
Actually, thank you for that. I think that will be an encouragement for a lot, although the last comment is I think they're looking for sooner rather than later in this imminent.
Understood, as am I.
Okay, thank you. New gas. It's the government's intention to encourage the construction of new gas stations, a concession that this government's decarbonisation plans are off track?
Absolutely not. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. We're very proud of what we've done regarding decarbonisation so far. We're the first country in the G7, the first country in the G20 to have our emissions. We've done that, by the way, at the same time as growing the economy by nearly 70% from 1990. You've got some of the stats in front of me here. Record generation in 2022.
I've got a feeling it's going to be a stat morning.
4 gigawatts of renewable capacity installed since 2022, 40 gigawatts of renewable capacity connected since 2010, and a large auction for onshore wind to date announced just last week. That was £800 million. When you look at what we are doing in terms of transition, we are actually leading the world. When we go to COP, and I represent this country at various forums across the world, Minister, other countries look to us in awe at what we've managed to achieve.
Minister,
yes,
I do enjoy party political broadcasts. I'm one of the few viewers that
party political. This is
or a government political broadcast. But what was your alternative consideration to gas? And can you show us the working for that?
Look, it's incredibly important. The subject of this inquiry is keeping the power on. We have a responsibility to the British people to do just that. And of course, tough decisions have to be made in that regard. We all recognise that towards the end of this decade, there could be a capacity gap. And so to ensure that the lights stay on, that people's homes are heated and businesses are able to continue to flourish, we need to do what we need to keep the power on in this country. And that means installing and making sure that we have new gas facilities.
Apart from gas? Was it just gas?
Of course,
because you only thought it was gas.
We are investing in a whole range of technologies.
What could have been the alternative to gas if the gas was to suddenly end tomorrow? What would you have done instead of gas?
But gas isn't going to end tomorrow.
No, but if it
will be significant amounts.
I'm not really asking, because I'm asking about your alternative. I'm just postulating that so I can get to your alternative. What would you have your alternative have been?
When it comes to value for money, when it comes to reliability of supply, when it comes to ensuring that the lights stay on in this country, which is one of the key jobs of a department, which is not just the Department for Net Zero, but the Department for Energy Security, the decision was taken that is where we're headed.
Maybe I'm being over presumptuous. Was there an alternative considered to gas? I mean, I've asked you for the alternative. I haven't heard the alternative yet. So now I'll go back one and ask, was there an alternative considered?
This decision was taken because we have a responsibility to the British people to keep the lights on in this country, and that's what we're going to do, which is why the Secretary of State took the tough decision that she did last week. But Dan, to my left here, actually was involved in the formulation of that policy. So I wonder if you would like to say a bit more, Dan, about how we actually came to the decision we did.
Any of the alternatives, Dan, which is really what I'm pushing at. I think that's what viewers would, and people who are paying attention to this, would like to know. What's the alternative considered?
So we obviously looked at likely electricity demand projections over the next 10-15 years. We looked at the capacity we already have on the system, a lot of which is unabated gas at the moment. We have 35 gigawatts of unabated gas generation on the system. We commissioned external consultants to go and do a deep dive into all of those existing plants and understand when they might be likely to retire. And what that showed was perhaps 10 to 15 gigawatts of the existing gas generation might retire.
How many gigawatts are you planning to build?
So if I can just continue to sort of work with the numbers. So 35 gigawatts of existing gas on the system at the moment, and 10 to 15 gigawatts of that gas might retire over 35. And so then we looked at the other technologies that are available, so particularly technologies that can provide a similar system function, if you like, so power CCUS, hydrogen to power. And what that showed is actually the development time, the infrastructure lead times for some of those technologies is 7 to 10 years away, and that's not just us saying that, that's the Committee on Climate Change saying that as well. And so the only technology that is available at the moment in the kind of timescales that we're talking about, really looking at the kind of late 2020s, early 2030s, is unabated gas, and whether that's building new unabated gas to replace the existing power plants as they come offline, or investing to extend the lifetime of those existing gas, and that's what we looked at.
Do you agree that by 2035 it should be 2%, providing about less than 2% of the UK's electricity?
So I think those are Committee on Climate Change projections are for unabated gas to be 2% of our generation by 2035. I think projections that the department has published in the past suggest it's in the kind of 1 to 2% range, and the announcement last week is entirely consistent with those.
How many gigawatts is coming then, are you aiming to build?
So I think as the Minister set out, we expect that it could be up to 5 gigawatts of investment in new and refurbishing existing gas generation.
Okay.
It should be recognised also, Chairman, just to that will be down from 38% of the UK's energy supplied by gas today, which is a significant reduction.
You're seeing a big drop in gas?
100%.
And therefore dependency on imported gas will not be as big in future, you think?
No, yes, which is one of the reasons we're taking the action that we are, not just to drive towards our net zero targets and decarbonise our energy system, but actually to improve our energy security and independence.
Just finally, the void asset stranding, should it be mandatory for new gas plants to be built with CCS or hydrogen firing installed up front?
Yes, all new gas plants should be net zero ready. The Secretary of State has set that out quite clearly.
Excellent, thank you very much. Mark Garnier.
Thank you. Just following on from that, actually, I was just doing the maths. So you've got 35 gigawatts of existing gas capacity. You're losing 15 gigawatts. And then you're going to refurbish or renew 5 gigawatts. Is that right?
Yes,
You're
roughly.
going to end up with 20 gigawatts of capacity or thereabouts.
So again, looking at what other organisations, the numbers that they've put out there. So the system operator, I think, has projections that suggest we might need around 25 to 27 gigawatts of unabated gas on the system by 2035. The National Infrastructure Commission, I think, 22 to 28 gigawatts. So again, what we said last week is entirely consistent with those numbers and with other organisations.
When I follow this on this one of these WhatsApp kind of things you can get, and currently we're using 15.8 gigawatts of gas, which is 43% of our demand of 36.7 gigawatts. It rarely goes above 15 or 20. I mean, it's. I mean, you could almost lose that 15 and not have to renew anymore.
But we have to ensure that the capacity is there. Mark, when you look at the coldest days in this country tend to be the days when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining, and there needs to be the ability for us to continue to generate power in those.
Today's a good day as an example because we've got 3.4 gig of wind and 3.3 of things. So nuclear is pretty steady at around 3.7 gigawatt. Okay.
Of course, we want to increase that to 24 gigawatt by 2050.
Well, this is exactly what I want to come on to. So you've been looking at developing bespoke support arrangements for a suite of flexible low carbon technologies. We're looking at CCS, hydrogen power stations, hydrogen storage, long duration energy storage. How much by 2035? How much of this is going to be available?
Well, we don't obviously have set targets when it comes to that. We are working on investing in a range of technologies, including, as you said, CCS and hydrogen storage capacity. And by supporting 2 projects in the first allocation round, we fully expect them to be up and running by 2035. But that's, as a part of a wider energy mix.
Yeah, but nonetheless, there's an awful lot of people who require some quite clear definition of what's going to happen in the future. It takes, how long does it take to build a gas power station, for example? 10 years? A nuclear power station, 15, 20? It's if we're looking out to 2035, it's quite tricky.
No, I completely understand that, and to give investors certainty and to give the markets and indeed the British people the certainty that we're taking the right decisions, I understand why they need certainty and stability. But we are setting out through Track 1 and Track 2 CCS projects by developing our hydrogen plan and all of the work that we're doing on those technologies, as well as all the other, including the nuclear technology that I'm responsible for. I think we're setting out a clear direction of travel for the UK. I understand very much why more certainty and clarity is desired, and that is completely understood, and we're working to deliver that. But these things take time. I mean, the fact is, for example, I know that there's some questions around why we set out a target for gigawatt, for how future gigawatt for nuclear, but we haven't for some other technologies. And the reason for that is this is an established technology, and there are many variables when it comes into when we move towards talking about CCS and hydrogen who have not been proven at scale as yet. But we are, as I said, supporting 2 of the projects through Track 1 and moving forward.
Well, look, I wanted to ask about nuclear because I think 24 gigawatts is the commitment I think for the government, and then that's 3 power stations. So we've got one which we're going to hear about and be committed to before the end of this Parliament, which who knows when it could be? Maybe October, maybe even this week if we go early. But it's but then and 2 more in the next Parliament, which then requires the next government, which obviously you and I probably hope we're hoping for, but we've got to be realistic. Again, there's still quite a lot of uncertainty. These things take a huge amount of time. And actually, one of the things we have heard during the course of these inquiries is that we can see a nuclear power station being held up for a year whilst the local planning authority is arguing the toss about where to dump silt from the cooling stations of that nuclear power station. So this type of thing can take years and years and years. Can we wait as long as next Parliament in order to have two-thirds of the production be decided on?
Well, obviously, we're developing Hinkley right now, as you say. We're moving forward with Sizewell. The capital raise process is underway right now. We moved the development consenting order for Sizewell in January. And yes, we're going to be moving towards the decision on a 3rd gigawatt scale reactor in the next Parliament. That's certainly the ambition. But above and beyond that, we've got a small modular reactor programme that we are developing. We're running the down selection competition right now. We've got 6 technologies from 6 vendors from across the world competing to win the Great British Nuclear SMR down selection for investment in this country. So a combination of small modular, gigawatt scale, and we are anticipating advanced modular reactors that do not maybe need the government support or to go through the Great British Nuclear process to also be a part of that 24 gigawatt mix. That would be roughly 25% of the UK's energy demand by 2050, we anticipate. So,
can I've only got about 30 seconds left, but can I just ask a quick question about alternatives? Because one of the things that hasn't been coming up in any of this, apart from one occasion, was local heat distribution networks. As something, this committee went to Copenhagen, had a look at that, and I think 99% of buildings are now heated by local distribution networks. I haven't seen anything from the government about any of this. Is this something which the government is looking at?
You're actively looking at, and I'd be happy to write to you in more detail given the time that we have on what we're doing on heat networks, but it's something we're very supportive of and taking action on.
Excellent. One minute, Mr. Gardner.
Remind me when the X-Links subsea cable from Morocco is coming in.
Well, that project, I've actually met with that company. I'm very interested by what they're proposing. And
comes in at 2030, doesn't it? And it would then supply 8% of UK electricity. Is that correct?
Yes, I think roughly, yes.
3.6 gigawatt. So why is that not in your factoring for the 10 to 15 replacement that you need?
Well, because although I'm very supportive of what X-Links are doing, it hasn't been given final approval yet. So I think to build that into our projections when that project has not been given final approval either by our government or indeed by the other governments that have to be aligned.
A lot of this hasn't been given final approval yet, has it?
Yeah, but we can't make projections.
Yet you're talking about building out new gas-fired power stations which haven't been given final
purely within our gift, Mr. Gardner. X-Links will have for X-Links to proceed. It is in the gift of many governments, as you know, from Morocco to Spain to Portugal to France and indeed our own, to ensure that project gets speedy delivery and is able to come onto the grid. But it's a project that I'm very supportive of, and I want to see succeed.
Thank you, Lord While. We've got a minute for you.
So, for the new gas, you're saying it will all be carbon capture and storage?
We want all new gas stations to be net zero ready, and yes, of course, that means ultimately being carbon capture and storage.
But you dismissed the other options, like hydrogen, because you said it wasn't proven technology.
It's not proven at scale just yet.
Yes?
It's not that we dismiss it, we can't set targets.
You've dismissed it for this particular set of plants. You've not dismissed it.
Oh, yes, yeah.
But you equally, just a second ago, acknowledged, quite rightly, that carbon capture and storage is equally unproven at scale and equally is likely to take the same amount of time to prove at scale. So why have you supported gas CCS in this particular option but not other options when they will all, in your own words, are unproven technologies at mass scale?
Well, because as you know, Lloyd, we've developed the Track 1 and Track 2 for carbon capture and storage, so we know that these plants will be up, these hubs will be up and running at the time that we need the new gas to come online.
The plants will be up and running, but actually the CCS commitment is probably a wish and a hope.
It's absolutely not a wish and a hope. We're absolutely committed to it, but it's impossible for us right now to set a target of gigawatt on something which hasn't been proven at the scale it would need to be to have a CCS finish. But we have set our ambition on CCS to our Track 1 and Track 2, and we're absolutely confident that we'll deliver. But we cannot, at this point in 2024, set a target for gigawatt, given the unknowables when it comes to that technology.
Minister. Derek Thomas.
Thank you very much. So, Minister, thank you for your time today. Your department,
on time, just.
what is it doing to prepare for future energy security issues?
We're investing a lot of time on considering energy security issues. It is one of the, as you see in the name of the department, energy security and net zero. It's the reason that we were set up. So everything from issuing new licences for North Sea oil and gas production, to reduce our reliance on overseas, to developing the new technologies such as nuclear and new renewables to become more energy independent. All of that is being done to ensure that we become more energy secure. What informs us on that journey is the annual energy security report that we get submitted to us by the ESO, soon to be the NESO, and obviously capacity is for generation is developed through the capacity market scheme.
Yeah. So that's what I want to pick up on in terms of where the responsibility lies. So
you do too.
As a responsibility for
about 5.
Security of supply, how is it split between the department,
5.
Ofgem, NESO, which you just referred to, in the centre of government? It's quite a complex, complicated.
I wouldn't say it was complex. They're shared responsibilities. We all have responsibility to ensure the security of supply and the energy independence, or increased energy independence, of the United Kingdom. And I work very closely with colleagues at Ofgem and both, as it is right now, the ESO, to ensure that we achieve our aims and as the report is looking into, keep the power on.
Yeah, thanks. One thing that frustrates us all is the lead times to get infrastructure built. It drives us all crackers. So do you think your department looks far enough ahead at what infrastructure is needed, given the time it takes to get the shovels in the ground?
Absolutely. Now, I know there's a huge frustration, not just from this committee, but indeed across industry and the country at large, at the long lead times and the connection times and the lack of action when it comes to developments or improving, modernising the grid. That's why we commissioned Nick Windsor to compile a report and give government recommendations how we have connection times so we can actually build the grid infrastructure that we need. We responded to that with the Transmission Acceleration Action Plan. That was in November last year. Essentially, Nick Windsor gave us 10 recommendations. We adopted all 10 recommendations wholesale. Now we're implementing those 10 recommendations. There's also work going on between the ESO and Ofgem to look at the existing queuing system for projects. There's lots of zombie projects in there that are holding up legitimate projects that will actually connect to the grid. So how we can look at that, review that, and remove those projects that have no prospect of actually connecting, they're holding other projects up. So there's a whole host of activities ongoing right now that we are engaging in to ensure that we can actually get to the point we need, which is to build the infrastructure required to decarbonise and move our transmission network into the 21st century.
So we just had a long discussion about where gas fits in and why we need to secure supply. The government set up a energy task force to look at how we reduce government energy. I think it was called the Energy Efficiency Task Force. That was then scrapped. Has the government given up on actually looking at how we reduce energy demand and just concentrated on making sure there's enough supply?
No, absolutely not. We're very focused on looking how we reduce demand. When you look at our work on insulation, for example, when you look at what we're doing in terms of encouraging people to take simple steps to reduce their own personal demand, and how we're working with business to ensure that they also take steps to reduce their energy usage. The government is absolutely committed to that. We saw just, I think it was a year and a bit ago, Grant Shapps' campaign with the Elf on the Shelf. That sort of thing, of course, remains very important to us. But, of course, ensuring that we have the requisite supply to keep the lights on in this country is our overarching ambition.
I understand the reasons behind why that energy task force was scrapped, but it was a very positive intention. Is there any intention of the department now to look at how that can be recommissioned or set up?
To the best of my knowledge, no, but I will take that away and ask the question within the department and get back to you.
That's great.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Thomas. Very efficient indeed. Mark Posey.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, you've spoken about not knowing which technologies are going to be the answer in the future. You said technology is not yet proven. There are lots of technologies awaiting final approval. But where's the plan, in the sense that government have promised to commission the National Energy System Operator to produce a strategic spatial energy plan? It's a moving target. It's very difficult to tie that. So when are we ever going to be in a state to say we know enough about the various technologies to have a plan, which would mean that decisions such as the one that we learnt about on gas only the other day wouldn't come as such a shock to people?
Yeah, no, completely. I hear you, Mark, and I completely sympathise. We're the first government, we're the first department to commit to a strategic spatial energy plan. I think that would be greatly to the benefit of industry, to the country at large, to give that sense of certainty and that direction of travel. We aim to commission the ESO to begin work on this in the spring, and we also expect...
Work would start next year?
So that work would start next year, yes.
Okay, how long would that take, and when would it be ready to be delivered? And then, or more crucially, who's responsible for making sure it's adhered to?
Well, the centralised strategic network plan will be published, and and actions taken from that in 2026, in summer 2026. That is our aim. Who's responsible for that would be the NESO, which was established as the FSO through the Energy Act.
And are you confident that we'll know enough about these emerging technologies to be able to set out a programme which can be adhered to?
Yes, I mean, obviously, as you said, it's a movable feast. There are improvements, developments, and new technologies coming on stream all the time. I look at the developments in wave, in tidal, for example. That will obviously play a larger part in our energy mix moving forward than they play at the minute. But yes, I do think we will have enough of an understanding of what we need from what technology so as to enable us to actually develop that plan, which will allow investors, which is key to succeeding, to come to the UK. We're already the fourth best country in the world when it comes to investability in new energy projects. We want to obviously move up that league table, but this plan will help us do that.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Again, very efficient. Thank you. Vicky Ford.
So we know that more home heating needs to be electrified, both from the energy security and the net zero point of view. How are you going to make sure that that new electricity demand is as flexible as possible?
By investing in the range of technologies that we are. That's why we're taking the decisions we have to move to track 1 and track 2 with CCUS. That's why we've taken the decision to invest in nuclear. That's why we've developed our hydrogen plan. That's why we are investing as much as we are in renewables, be that solar, tidal, and also looking afresh and investing and actually ring fencing in the last CFD round in geothermal, because we need a whole wide range of energies, as well as building up the storage capacity in this country, be that battery storage, pump storage. Through the investment in all of these technologies and the development that we're making across the piece, we believe that we'll have the flexibility required to support this country.
You've just given us a long list of technologies, and the one that you didn't mention was wind.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I said offshore wind.
Hold on. And some of those technologies are very new and unproven, including carbon capture and storage, some of the hydrogen technologies, but it's great that we're working on them. But on wind, which is the most proven, is it possible to achieve net zero electricity system by 2035 without significant amounts of onshore wind?
On wind, I mean, we have...
Onshore wind.
I mean, onshore, we have onshore wind right now, 15.5 gigawatts of onshore wind, and when it comes to wind overall,
is that in Scotland or England?
A significant amount of that is in Scotland, yes, because there's a different planning and consenting regime when it comes to onshore wind north and south of the border. But when it comes to wind overall, wind, as you're absolutely right, Vicky, plays an incredibly important role in our energy mix. And we're very proud we have the first to fifth largest offshore wind farms in the world generating power for the
onshore
UK right now.
Wind.
We are investing in onshore and offshore. Where there is community buy-in and support in England, they will be those projects can proceed. As I said, there's a different planning and consenting regime in Scotland, so right now a significant amount of that onshore wind is being developed in Scotland. But as a wider part of the mix, yes, we are on track to meet our 2035 objectives.
And so the government's new policy about onshore wind with community consent, I completely understand the with community consent is really important. And actually the with community consent is needed, for example, for the grid to take the electricity where it goes. But on the onshore wind, why is the government not yet committed to setting a target for that?
Yeah.
And should they?
Look, we are committed to investing in every conceivable technology that will decarbonise, reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and improve our energy security and independence. And I gave you a long list of what we were doing there, including what we're doing in offshore wind. We have made it easier for those communities that want to see onshore wind developed in their communities do that. In England and in Scotland, there is onshore wind proceeding apace, which plays into the overall energy field in the UK. But it is really important. You mentioned community consent, as you said. The communities across this country feel like they're being taken on the journey and are being worked with and aren't having things done to them. If that happens too much, then we will see a rise in the scepticism that we're already seeing across the country when it comes to our overarching net zero objectives. So ensuring that communities are taken with us and are able to have that conversation is vitally important.
So I appreciate that the change in policy to allow onshore wind in England with community consent is quite new.
Yeah.
Are you working already with certain communities to try and deliver some of the first projects? In which case, where? And if not, then when do you expect to see some of those first projects delivered?
Well, it's obviously a commercial decision for the companies involved to determine where those projects should be, and they have got set guidelines as to how they are able to deliver those projects. We have made it easier for those communities who want to see onshore wind being built in those communities, and we stand ready to assist those companies, those communities, deliver those projects where they are wanted.
And so how many companies are currently talking to local communities about those projects?
I mean, obviously I don't have that information to hand, and some of that would be commercially confidential.
But I'm sure that you could provide us with a range, the sort of, without necessarily giving examples.
We'll see through the next auction round. I think it will become quite apparent the number of interested parties.
I'm sure it would be very helpful, Chair, if the Minister would write to the committee with the sort of numbers of projects that are currently in discussion with local communities.
If it is possible and not breaching any confidentiality agreements to do that, yes, I would be happy.
I think that would be very helpful, because there's some suggestion that none of these projects have started discussions. If that's not the case, then let's show that. And what technologies are you expecting to play a greater role after 2050? I mean, we've heard of, projects that are so far away, but what's the vision for that?
It's difficult to say. I mean, look, for up to 2050, we've set out our ambitions. For example, 70 gigawatts of solar we want to see on the grid by 2035. Solar, wind, tidal, hydrogen. Nuclear will all play a part in generating power post 2050, but it's actually impossible. It's one of the greatest. I think this is one of the greatest jobs of government, because you, on a daily basis, are seeing new technologies pass across your desk and developments being made in nascent technologies, such as tidal, for example, that will play a larger role than they are at the minute in generating power for the UK. So, but it does make it a near impossibility to give an assessment, a qualified assessment of how power will be generated post 2050, other than to say that everything we're investing in right now will play a significant role post that date.
We've been told, sorry, I'm short of time, that the planning and consenting system for energy infrastructure is very short-staffed at the moment. Is that true, and in which case what are you doing to fix it?
I think what we need to do is see what we can as central government do to support those at the various levels of the planning and consenting process. So, for example, in local authorities, and even going all the way down to parish councils, who are the first rung on the ladder when it comes to the planning and consenting regime, we're doing a whole host of work alongside DLUC to review the planning and consenting process to make it easier to build energy infrastructure, whilst at the same time recognising the huge community concerns that are evident across some parts of this country when it comes to building that infrastructure. But staffing up those offices in local authorities across the country is a priority, and we're looking at how we are able to do that. It may be through the community benefits package that the Chancellor unveiled at the autumn statement. It could be through some other means, but yes, it is recognised and it is a problem.
And Minister, just last, very briefly. We had the most wonderful visit to go and see the community hydrogen project in Scotland. And I just would like to say, I hope on behalf of all the committee members who went, It was a really interesting project. It was very good to see how the local community had been brought alongside that. Yes. And those sort of community projects, I thought, and I think we all felt...
Very briefly, Minister.
This is in Fife, obviously. Look, I completely agree. The way that they have gone about that project is an exemplar to other companies who are seeking to develop either new technologies, develop energy infrastructure, or invest in parts of the country that aren't used to the investment that they're seeing right now, engage with communities and take them on that journey. It's something that I don't think happens enough at present. It's certainly something we're seeking to encourage, and they should be looking to the hydrogen project in Fife as an example as to what to follow.
Indeed. Just quickly, Mr. before I turn to Barry Gardner, isn't there a problem with the configuration of wind in that the hiatus or the pause that came into the construction in England leaves problems with transmission, and to reach net zero for the UK, but effectively England, by 2035, there's going to be significant demand for onshore wind or need for onshore wind in England, yeah?
Chairman, as I said, we have changed the
I mean, how many
system
turbines were built in England in 2022? It's two,
I think it's, but Chairman, yes, okay, look, I don't have the concern, I don't share the concern that we're not going to reach our 2035 objective as it stands right now, given everything that we're investing in and given the incredible pace at which we're building.
I've been at this game a while, and I have faced ministers from former DEC who told me that the smart meter rollout was going to happen in about 2017, 2018. Those ministers weren't in place to take any responsibility. The department had gone. And when a minister tells me that he's quite confident of something in 10 years' time, you will forgive me for my pinch of salt when I hear it.
But if you'd let me finish my point, it's incredibly important where we do build these new technologies, where we are building up...
My question about onshore wind in England, do you think it's important?
Communities that want to see onshore wind being built in that community, it's now easier for that to happen. It's easier for those companies to develop what we need to onshore.
Do you think it's important? Onshore wind in England, do you think it's important for the net zero targets in England?
I think all of what we're investing in right now, Chairman, is important. Offshore wind, onshore wind, nuclear, tidal, wave, geothermal, hydrogen, all of that is vitally important to reaching our objectives for 2035 and our ultimate objective for 2050.
See where that's going. Lloyd, listen, a quick question, then we have time for Barry Gardner.
You set targets for the amount of gas that you want in the medium term. You've just discussed the targets of the new gas. Why are you unable, because you said it was a proven technology, that's why you wanted to do that, why are you unable to set targets for onshore wind when it's a proven technology, and you don't put the caveat of community buy-in for horrible gas power stations next to their houses? So why do you put an additional caveat for wind that is additional, despite it being much nicer to live next door?
It's political.
I'm going to have to I take issue with that, Barry. I'm going to have to correct you. We don't have a target for gas. It's our expectation that's the amount of gas that's going to be required.
Expectation on onshore wind?
Because, look...
Tomatoes.
We do have an expectation of what we're going to need for onshore wind, and that's why we're investing in onshore wind. That's why we've got 15.5 gigawatts of onshore wind on the grid right now.
You have a gigawatt expectation for gas. What's your gigawatt expectation for onshore wind? It's easy, come on.
Look, we have an expectation that across the piece we're going to reach our 2035
You don't have anything, you've not done the work. That's fine.
That's fine. Barry Gardner, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, the subsidy to DRACs during the period 2012 to 2027, just so we agree the figure, is £11 billion, right?
Yes.
Now, I'm sure that you hate public money being spent recklessly or wastefully. And
you had to say yes to this one.
You will know that your own report, the Task and Finish Group report, found that the top issue affecting whether X can deliver net removal of CO2 is the integrity of the biomass supply chain. You'll also recall the National Audit Office's report and their conclusion. In our view, the lack of an evaluation of how effective the government's monitoring arrangements for biomass have been particularly given the long supply chains involved, means the government cannot demonstrate that its current arrangements are adequate to give it confidence industry is meeting sustainability standards. My basic logic, putting all that together, means that we are spending £11 billion subsidising a technology which we are not monitoring the delivery of carefully enough to ascertain whether it is meeting our decarbonisation and sustainability objectives. Is that also the logic that you would apply to the situation?
No, we are supporting our technology to ensure that the electricity system we have in the UK is reliable and is dependable and keeps the lights on in this country. And actually we have no evidence, and the government only supports... Sorry, Mr Gardner, if I could finish. The government only supports sustainable...
We're going to let the Minister respond. Minister.
The government only supports sustainable biomass and generators, and the NEO report found that there was no sustainability breaches whatsoever. So we're continuing with our policy of supporting technologies that ensure that power is delivered effectively across the United Kingdom, whilst ensuring that only sustainable biomass is used in that process. And we have got absolute confidence that that is the case right now.
I cannot see how you can have absolute confidence that what is happening is sustainable when the National Audit Office has said that you are not evaluating how there is no evaluation of how effective you've been in monitoring the supply chains.
The NEO...
Particularly about the confidence in meeting the sustainability standards. So for you to sit there and tell me that actually we are supporting only sustainable biomass, when actually the National Audit Office itself is telling you, reporting to government, that actually you have no way of knowing that it's sustainable, I find absolutely perverse.
National Audit Office report found that there was no breaches in terms of sustainability requirements.
There can't be if you don't monitor it properly.
They are monitored, Mr Gardner. Please calm down. They are monitored, and the government has been quite clear that we would not be supporting these companies generating biomass if it wasn't sustainably sourced biomass that they were using. So that is why we're continuing to support, and we have got absolutely no evidence either as a department or through the National Audit Office that isn't the case.
You've no evidence at all?
No.
You've not seen, for example, the Panorama report or the Canadian report. You've not watched any of those or had any qualms.
We obviously continue to monitor the situation, and where there are issues raised, we investigate them. But thus far,
not adequately monitor it, according to the National Audit Office.
You also found there was no evidence of any sustainability breaches.
Because you haven't adequately monitored it, Minister. Let's not go round in that circle again.
You're happy to go round in circles because, as it stands right now, the government is quite clear. I'm quite clear. My department is monitoring and only supporting those who are sustainably sourcing their biomass.
If a police force said to you that we have no evidence of this crime, and you found that no detective had gone out there and looked for any evidence, would you not think that the police force wasn't doing its job properly?
The idea that we're not monitoring is for the birds, Mr Gardner. You know that. I'm very confident in our monitoring procedures, and as I said, there's no evidence.
Confident in the monitoring procedures, Minister, if the National Audit Office is telling you that they're inadequate to ensure that it is sustainable.
We disagree with the National Audit Office on that point.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Thank you, Minister. So actually, the National Audit Office is wrong. You think your monitoring is absolutely fine.
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, at least we've got a response and we know where we stand now. Thank you very much.
A minute and a half.
Okay. Let's turn to small biomass power station. The government is proposing to let the subsidies lapse in 2027. We've heard from some of those small biomass power stations. They say if current government policy prevails and ROCs end in 2027 with no replacement revenue support mechanism, potentially more than 50 biomass plants will have to shut down between 27 and the early 2030s, with the removal from the grid of up to 2.8 gigawatts. Does that give you any cause for concern?
Yeah, obviously, we look at all of these things in the round. The situation, however, is that the view has been taken, that I agree with, that the renewables obligation no longer actually offers value for money. It's been running for 20 years, and we'll be looking at other options to support technologies across the United Kingdom. But as it stands right now, the renewable obligation will be coming to an end. It doesn't offer value for money for people in the UK. I understand the concern around this. We will continue to investigate and look at what we can do to support not just small-scale biomass, but all the other technologies.
There may be a new subsidy regime.
Well, I'm not committing to anything right now, but of course we're looking at all the options to ensure that we continue to generate the power that we need.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Colombo Gardner there, very impressed. Vicky Ford, you want to supplement on this area? Are you happy? Has everything been aired properly?
So when Drax came to see us, they tried to explain that you could cut down one great big tree and plant a little tiny sapling and that would all be carbon neutral. Do you agree that that is absolute rot? Sorry for the language.
Rot's a permissible word.
I haven't seen nor have I read Drax's evidence, so I wouldn't like to comment on.
He hasn't monitored it properly.
I strongly advise that the Minister should read the evidence that's given to this committee, and that if the Minister treats this committee seriously, as they should, they or their staff should do this committee the courtesy of reading the evidence that's been given to previous witnesses before coming to the committee.
And I do read the evidence for previous committees, but I haven't read it in detail, that specific session in detail enough to qualify your comment that what they, as in your words, were saying was rot.
They made that comment a number of times, and I asked them to stop making that comment because clearly cutting down a
30 seconds.
Mature tree to a small one. If you were purely burning wood that had fallen from trees, that was making fire breaks, that was trying to reduce forest fires, then that might be a good way of being carbon neutral. But does the Minister agree that there must be much better monitoring of our and the world's forests to make sure that the UK is not involved in deforestation at scale?
Well, the UK has led the way when it comes to combating deforestation, but of course there's always improvements that can be made, and we're working with international partners to ensure that we do make those improvements.
Our Colombo edition wants another 3 seconds, so I'm prepared to.
Just to remind you, Minister, as we always used to remind ministers on the Public Accounts Committee, the Public Accounts Committee reports are agreed reports with the Permanent Secretary. So given that you have now stated publicly that you disagree with the National Audit Office report, I trust you'll bottom that out with your Permanent Secretary.
Disagreed
and,
with...
And then write to us about how you resolved that disagreement.
I'd be very happy to write to the member at any time, but can I just qualify what I said? We disagreed with their supposition that the monitoring wasn't adequate. Of course we don't disagree with the report in total, which found that there was no breaches of sustainability.
Thank you. Lord Russell-Moyle.
Thank you very much. Do you expect consumer energy bills to become more or less expensive over the next decade and then into the long term?
We expect them to come down. In fact, we're seeing energy bills reduce as we speak. I think they're down £200 from this point last year, and over the course of the next few decades, as more of these technologies come on stream, we are very confident the energy bills will come down quite considerably.
Hinkley Point C now looks like it may cost up to £46 billion.
Goodness.
In light of this, is new large-scale nuclear worth the price?
Yes, large-scale nuclear is expensive, but in my view, it's an expense we cannot afford not to spend. Nuclear is absolutely vital when it comes to delivering on our net zero objectives. It's now agreed across the world that there can be no net zero without nuclear, and 30 countries came together at COP28 under the leadership of John Kerry, interestingly somebody who used to lead the campaign against new nuclear power stations in the United States, to pledge to increase nuclear generating capacity by 30% by 2050. The UK was in the vanguard of that, and through our nuclear roadmap that we published and our commitment to 24 gigawatts by 2050, we are sure that not only will this new nuclear generating capacity reduce our reliance on foreign imports, reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, but also lead to a position where energy bills are coming down. If you go look at Finland, for example.
Do you expect new nuclear power to come on board cheaper than Hinkley Point?
Yes, we do. In fact, we expect Sizewell, for example, which is a sister to the Hinkley reactor, to be far cheaper when it's delivered due to lessons being learned at the Hinkley site right now. And ultimately, it will have the effect of driving down consumers' bills. If you look at Finland, for example, where they have a huge reliance on nuclear power for their energy, bills have actually fallen by around 70% in the last few years.
Well, our bills have gone up because of our reliance on gas. On Hinkley Point,
which is why we need to reduce our reliance.
On Hinkley Point, we are indemnified against some of those price rises because, of course, we signed a contract and the EDF have to pay for some of the overruns, and I'm assuming the government is not going to come and suddenly bail out a very rich company. With the potential new nuclear sites, where will the risk burden be placed if the costs do spiral?
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. When it comes to Hinkley, it's a commercial project, and the cost of that project will be borne by EDF. Moving to the future, we're using the regulated asset-based model, which has been used, for example, for the Thames Tideway Tunnel as a way of giving the market confidence that the government will support this project.
But we are not. In layman's terms, where's the risk?
Well, the risk will lie with the commercial partners, and that will be a part of the commercial discussion that takes place.
If any price rises increase in future nuclear projects, commercial company will bore the whole cost?
Will depend very much on the individual contracts that are signed for those projects. We're not at that point when it comes to Sizewell, and certainly not at that point when it comes to a prospective 3rd gigawatt scale of having those discussions just yet.
MIT research shows that nuclear is the only technology that doesn't get cheaper as you build more. In fact, all the studies in the US show that the more plants you build, the higher the per unit cost is. In fact, doubling each time cumulatively a new power station is built. This is the reverse nuclear paradox to some extent, because all other technology follows a different path. Noting that, and noting the same problems that Finland have had with their new nuclear reactors that have been far more expensive than their old nuclear reactors, is there a danger that the 46 billion price tag will go even higher for new nuclear, and in fact it is just a cash cow that the government keeps milking?
Well, no. 46 billion for Hinkley Point C specifically is being borne by EDF, so the British taxpayer.
Who it's borne by? I mean, because eventually someone has to pay for it. Kind of money is not magicked up. No. So is there a danger, noting the MIT research, noting the Finland example where the reactor came in far more expensive than previous reactors that they had built, that actually nuclear technology is not a depreciating in terms of price, it increases in terms of price and therefore is not good value for the public?
Look, nuclear is expensive, that's absolutely right. We're looking at what we can do to deliver nuclear cheaper. The Secretary of State has commissioned work on that just recently, and when it comes to looking at how the regulatory bodies work, which obviously add cost and time, we think we move too slow in this country, for example, and those can add cost to the process.
US example is technology prices cost more, not regulatory prices.
The ultimate cost to bill payers will be reduced if we get more nuclear on stream.
You've got
and a reliable non-fossil fuel baseload, I think, is because the highly fluctuative
baseload is yesterday's technology, but
the highly fluctuative. Well, that's debatable, but we can have a discussion on that another time. The highly fluctuative gas market, as you already said, is the reason that energy prices went sky high over the past couple of years. Reducing our reliance on that and moving to other technologies is very important, and will reduce the price people pay for their energy.
Your target, 24 gigawatt nuclear target, do you think that's achievable?
Yes, I do.
So why does the energy system operator say that by 2050 you'll only have 16?
I disagree with that view. I do. I disagree with that view. We are allowed to disagree and question.
The organisation that you set up, the organisation that your department has established to do the assessments, the organisation that your department has established to help the delivery of the infrastructure says that it will not be possible and it will be 16 gigawatts. So why do you know more than the organisation that you found, you set up, but you have the overview and that is the expert in this? Why are you so clever and everyone else is so stupid?
Well, I would as you know, I would never go as far as to suggest that. But what I am, we don't take these decisions or make these assumptions or pronouncements in isolation. We do this in discussion.
So what other evidence do you have? That
Mark Garnier.
You look at our program build, when you look at what we're doing on gigawatt as well as on small modular reactor, it is absolutely achievable that we reach 24 gigawatts by 2050, which will be 25% of the overall UK's overall energy demand. Sorry, Chairman.
Thank you.
We're going to keep
entertaining as that is, time marches on. Mark Garnier.
This is fantastic telly.
Please.
Box office.
Shut up. Just very quickly on this new 24 gigawatt production. What is the cost coming out of the power station before any subsidies and all the rest of it per megawatt hour? Do you know what the cost of the value?
There's been a lot of work done, and it is being done to assess what the cost will be eventually when these new power stations are up and running. It's impossible to say that sitting in 2024 for a technology that will only come on stream in 2030.
But it's going to be way higher than the spot price now, isn't it?
That is one of the suppositions, yes.
Yeah, okay. What I really want to do is talk about interconnectors. So Ofcom has recently judged that it does not want to support several interconnector projects, and it demonstrated the fact that there are a whole lot of trade-offs that exist between, for example, the benefits of stronger energy linked to our neighbours, such as increased resilience and reduced emissions. And then against that is the cost of British consumers, and that can be sort of summed up with things like the cost of curtailment for the wind farms. How are you proposing to strike the balance with all of this?
It's really important. Obviously, interconnectors are vital to the UK in terms of delivering on our net zero objectives when it comes to importing clean power, but also in terms of exporting power to Europe, because I think there was a recent report published which suggested that Europe will not reach its net zero objectives without offshore wind, which is being developed in British waters, and obviously we need to export that power to the continent. So there is a fine balance, obviously, between the cost to consumer and the cost to bill payer and achieving those objectives, which we believe ultimately will reduce bills in the long run. That is why ultimately the decision on interconnectors actually does lie with Ofgem, so they can take that balanced view about the cost to bill payer and whether or not that's it's desirable.
Some of that argument is man-made or government-made reasons. So, for example, curtailment is pain in the neck for everybody because we're paying wind farms to spin around and not deliver the electricity. Surely there must be a better way that we can organise this.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. That's the reason why we're looking at building up our storage capacity. That's the reason why we're improving our transmission network. So we don't need to curtail.
Interconnectors are one of those solutions.
And interconnectors is one of the solutions to that issue.
Ofgem are at odds with the thinking of the government, is that right?
I mean, I don't know if there are odds. Some of the recent announcements from Ofgem on these projects are obviously interim and no final decision has been taken. So there are discussions around what can be improved, and I know discussions are going on with their European counterparts, and I and myself have been in discussion with my counterparts on the continent. I'm in fact travelling to Belgium tomorrow to continue those discussions to see what can be done to allay some of the concerns.
I think you're probably going to meet the same energy minister that we met when we were over there a few weeks ago.
Evander Stratton, yes I am.
That's the one, yeah, who's very impressive. So when we met with her, we were talking about the fact there's probably going to be 100 gigawatts of capacity in offshore wind farms in the North Sea. Obviously not all of it is going to be the UK, but it's going to be across a lot of nations. The North Sea is a big place, but we have a long North Sea coast. What's the UK government doing to make sure that we have a seat at the table when we decide what's going to happen with the North Sea and where this energy is going to go?
Well, not just having a seat at the table, Ms Garnier, but tomorrow I'm actually convening a meeting of the North Sea Cooperation Council at the British Embassy in Brussels to ensure that those discussions are actually being taken forward and the UK plays a full and active role in those discussions. We were present at the Ostend Summit and have been engaging. I met with the European Commissioner for Energy 2 months ago. I'm meeting the Commissioner again tomorrow.
Okay, so this sounds great, but we're not a member of the European Union. You've got a bloc there and they've got the United Kingdom.
Yes.
How those, do you find that we've been compromised by in this type of discussion?
I don't think so. I don't think so. We have been able to invest and be much more flexible in terms of what we can invest in terms of technologies than the member states of the European Union have. For example, we've been able to move as fast as we have in some regards because of our not being a member of that 27-nation bloc. And what I am finding is, yes, of course, following our immediate departure, the relations were strained between the EU and the UK across a whole host of areas, but including energy. In my recent engagements with the EU Commission and indeed bilaterally with my counterparts in Belgium and then Denmark, Sweden, the Czech Republic and others, is that those relations are in a much better place, and I'm expecting to continue to improve on that and to develop our plans together when I meet a whole host of them tomorrow in Brussels.
You're comfortable. That's good.
Yeah.
Just a sort of general final point. I mean, when we're looking at sort of integration with the European market and you know, X-Links potentially talking about integration with the North American market,
yes,
how important do you think all of this is for the UK's energy mix? And again, I'm not necessarily asking this from a point of view of how we're going to just import our electricity from elsewhere, but how we can smooth the grid out and how we can ultimately get energy security.
I think it's vitally important, and I wouldn't be spending as much time engaging with my European counterparts as I am if I didn't think that was the case. We look forward to moving the chapter on energy through the TCA on to the level to where it should be. It's one of the areas of greatest concern that we haven't moved that forward as much. And in terms of interconnectors, as I said, I look forward to having discussions with my Belgian and Dutch counterparts specifically on the concerns that have arisen through those.
I'm delighted it's not just the air miles are after. Brilliant, thank you.
No, I'm going by to be clear, I'm going by the train.
Minister, the title of this inquiry is Keeping the Power On. There's been talk about zonal energy. How will zonal energy help, in your view? Just a general, broad question, but this 30-second answer.
Well, this is a part of the consultation that we're engaging on right now, Mr. McNeill. You understand that there have been concerns raised about the cost that is being borne by some communities in terms of hosting the infrastructure and the high price of energy that they are having to pay. So we're having a discussion right now. Ofgem are engaging in a review.
Is your feeling it's positive? Do you have a positive feeling?
I wouldn't want to preempt the findings and the workings of Ofgem on that point.
Final point for me. Hinkley C started off to be 18 billion to be delivered and having power in 2017. It's now at 44 billion. If that was known at the time, do you think Hinkley would have been built?
As I said, nuclear is expensive, but it's an expense we cannot afford not to spend if we're going to reach our net zero objective.
If a devolved government had done this...
And of course we're disappointed...
You just shrug your shoulders as easily.
No, absolutely not. Of course we're disappointed that Hinkley has cost and time overruns that it has, but you have to remember the difficult environment in which they have been building, not least the difficulties in construction that arose through being in a pandemic and working through lockdown. And discussions have obviously been had with EDF, who are responsible for that project. They continue to work on that project. We're very confident that they will deliver, but the cost ultimately lies with EDF.
I don't think it was lockdown was 26 billion, but anyway, Minister, we shall leave it there. Time is better of us. Prime Minister's questions are on the way. Order. Thank you.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding has ended.